Hi guys, thanks for joining us today. Today we're going to be doing another copper effect. Like the previous video, we've done a copper patina effect, but this one is going to be pretty much a straight copper, but just with a little bit of an effect sort of in there, just to sort of really rich the copper up. Whereas instead of having just a straight shiny wall copper, we're going to put some effects in there, and I'll show you how, sort of roughly step by step. Similar process to the previous video, but this one has a couple of little extra touches. If you have painted your ceiling recently, make sure that everything is really dry, because what you're going to want to do is get yourself a low tack tape, just to basically give yourself a nice straight line. The last thing you want to do is trying to be sort of cutting the copper in, because that can mess with the effect if you're not going to be able to get close enough to it. Also, make sure that you do tape your skirtings and sheet everything, because what we're using today is a copper paint that's really thin. Because it's a water base, I'm not using a solvent base or anything like that, so you want to make sure that everything is thoroughly sheeted through, for the reason because it can fly everywhere. So let's get going. Right, now everything's taped up. As you can see behind me, this is the semi-tack tape that I've taped everything with. So it's just going to give you some really sharp lines for the main part of the feature wall. Make sure everything along the skirtings is taped up, everything's sheeted up as well, so you're not going to get anything on the floors or the carpet. I'm going to go for a 2-inch. So this will be for brushing all the corners and everything in. And then with a 9-inch medium pile roller, this is what I'm obviously going to use for rolling. And then you're going to want a sea-like sort of coral style sponge. This is what's going to help us with our effect. And on this one I'm going to be using a 3-inch, so I'll show you what this is for nearer the time. You can, anything from a 2 to 3, 4-inch, a big brush, entirely up to you. I prefer a 3-inch. I can pull it just around a little bit more for the actual effect itself. So let's get going. Now, as you can see, we've got the first coat on. What I will say is, don't panic too much. Your first coat will not look too great, but that's obviously why we're going to do a second coat. I may even possibly do a third on this, because the effect that I'm actually going to be going for, the really sort of rich copper effect, I'm going to actually be doing the effect with the paint. So it may be a case of doing a second and then possibly maybe doing our small areas with a third to sort of apply the effect itself. So now what we've just done there, we've done a second coat. The reason for doing the second coat was because it was quite a light grey on the wall beforehand. It wasn't covering to as solid as I wanted it. So what you want to do is, if it is a light colour and it's really not solid, you're going to want to get your base coats right. So you're going to want to do 2 coats to really body the wall itself. What we're going to be doing is working in small areas with the paint, because we're actually going to be using the paint with a sort of rich, sort of hammered kind of effect onto the copper anyway. And also, what I will say guys is, with the tape and everything that we have put up, not only does it give you sharp lines, but once you've brushed it, just make sure that when it comes to rolling, you get as close to them brush marks as possible, because otherwise you will see it. So you want to sort of get as close as you can, and then you're not going to have no flashing of the actual brush and roller. Then we're going to let this dry fully, and then we're going to we'll come back and we'll do the effect itself. Right, so now we've done the second coat. That's nicely dry now. As you can see, I've started brushing the tops of the ceilings in. So this is where we're actually going to apply the kind of like hammered sort of rich copper. So it's not sort of a clean shiny finish. There's something with a little bit of an effect to it. So what you're going to do is get your roller, load it up. Just work in small sections at a time because we're going to need to be overlapping this anyway. You're going to grab your brush and your sponge, and basically you can start from sort of any way. I like to start from the top, work my way down, and then do drops at a time. It's just in pattern. I'm coming down with that. So what you're basically effectively doing here is you're pulling the paint with a brush, and then what you want to then do is grab your sponge and just give a little bit of a dab here and there. What you don't want to do is completely cover it with that, because you actually still want the back effect to actually still come through. And what we'll do, we'll get to a certain point and then carry on the process. Right guys, so there you have it. After 3 coats in total, so as I say, we've done the first coat, and then the second coat to really sort of block the colour up, and then on the third was when we was working in small sections, gently, you know, with the brush, pulling the paint around, and then just dabbing certain little areas to give it a sort of really aged, you know, sort of hammered, blotchy sort of finish. If you was to, you know, just roll the normal copper paint on, what you're actually going to get is kind of like an almost orangey, browny sort of shiny finish. So whereas it's really important to make sure that you catch every area with the brush and the sponge. Also with this, after it has dried, you can also apply patina if you really wanted to give it a really sort of aged patina look. Thanks for watching today guys. I hope that you've taken tips. You know, if you are going to try this at home, please sort of get yourself a board and do a little bit of a practice run before you actually do it on the wall if this is your first time doing it. Until next time, thanks for watching. See you on the next video.